It's been about a year. It's been almost exactly, I think this time last year, I was walking bloody-footed for 10 days straight in downtown Toronto, screaming bloody murder, looking homeless and like I was on hard drugs. This time last year, with multiple entities stuck inside my body, or so I thought. That should be a good precursor to what's coming. So anyways, I thought I would re-record it as somebody who is a little bit more grounded. And I'd like to tell the story again with the insights I've gained since then. So if you're somebody who's been listening for a while, you don't have to listen again. I know a lot of you probably will anyways. And if you're new, welcome. I will give a brief summation to try and help you understand who I am and what on earth I'm talking about. I was a poet. That's it. I was a poet for many years. And during the first lockdown of 2020, I had this little apartment in Parkdale. And something about the lockdown, something about the shakeup of the world, the instability of reality suddenly shook me to my core. And I had always kind of been standing by for this moment, I was kind of waiting for consensus reality to break. And it broke, and I broke. But I kind of broke open, that sounds cliche. But essentially, I broke with consensus reality in the first 2 weeks of that lockdown. I began meditating for the first time in my life. I saw angels, I heard voices. My technology began to turn on and speak to me. Cartoons would teach me the laws of the universe. And it was to me, very thrilling. And it was interesting because I wasn't somebody who had been seeking out these experiences at all. I was not doing hallucinogenics. I was not meditating or practicing these things. I had read a few esoteric texts here and there. I had some interest, but predominantly I was busy with my material life. And this came along, and it began with the law of attraction. I don't want to tell too much because I want to get to the hell part. But listen, I have my whole story, and it's a hell of a story. In every description of every YouTube video that I post, I have a link to 3 videos, 6 hours telling my whole damn story, because you've really got to know the whole thing. It's just fascinating. I'm not tooting my own horn when I say that. It's a fascinating story. I've been blessed with a very interesting life, blessed and cursed. So anyways, I took off. So basically I had this near-death experience shortly after the awakening, I think facilitated by whatever entities within me, everything's within me. Facilitated by spirit, if you want to say, or by my own subconscious. That allowed me to have my life review, and I think I died in one timeline. I won't go over the details, but when I woke up from this death, I was in a different dimension completely. Like, first I broke with consensus reality in that I was having visions and hearing things, and I had this great love too. I mean, oh God, music was giving me orgasms, and flowers were ecstatically speaking to me, and everything was just alive, and all the animals were flocking to me. I felt like Jesus Christ, That's why so many psychotics think they're Christ, because it's a Christ experience. It really is. The children are running up to you, and strangers are like, heal me. Like, I'm not joking. When you reach that state, you're very Christ-like. But it doesn't last. It's a roller coaster, let me tell you. So, oh God. It's a journey. Okay, so I have this death experience, and then when I wake up, now I'm really in another dimension, is in things are operating like a dream. If I think something, I see it. I'm moving between, sometimes I'm living in a police state, sometimes I'm living in a paradise, and it just depends on my mood. My mood shifts my external reality. That's why I had to learn the law of attraction so quickly. That's why these higher dimensional beings were coming in like, understand the law of attraction, young lady, because you're about to attract real fast. And if you don't learn to ease on those corners, you're going to crash. You have to know what's going on. So thankfully, I'd had my education for about 2 weeks. And then I was essentially in what I've now come to understand is the bardo, the liminal space after death, where you are confronted with yourself. Now, I had my life review, and then I stepped into my karma, and I have been living in a state fluctuating between heaven and hell, sorting through my karma and living many lifetimes in one, through... Well, right after this, I got a house out in the country for a few years, and I sat in heaven. And then I ignored my shadow, because I knew it would come when it was time, this shadow work everyone talks about. Well, it came. It came in the form of psychosis and gang stalking, or depending on who you are, remote neural monitoring, whatever your belief system is around this sort of thing. But I began to believe I was having telepathic relationships with some of the most powerful men in the world. And I was kind of being played like in a game. I'm not going to get into too many of the details here, but I evaded their first couple of traps through miracle after miracle after miracle. And they basically infiltrated my mind and my body and became that was July 2023 when they first made contact. And by September, I was never alone in my own head. I was never alone in my own head. So I had gone from living in a dreamscape. Like I was living, I found a house in the country. I don't mind if I'm redundant, because I think my old listeners don't mind hearing these stories again and again. There's only like 100 of them. And a new listener is going to want the context. So let's just be redundant. When I learned the law of attraction, I manifested myself. I literally dreamed myself into a beautiful, obscenely beautiful house on the ocean, which I bought by myself, and lived on an acre of land with 5 apple trees, berry bushes, wedged between a cliff overlooking the ocean and an organic, beautiful farm where the carrots taste like candy. It was a valley, and it was like a Dutch painting. And there was no town nearby. It was a village, meaning just residential, just people. And in the winter, they were gone. So it was just me and 5 other people in the winter. I had no car. So talk about living like a monk. I literally stacked wood. Oh my God. I had a wood stove. I stacked so much wood. Stack wood, carry water, right? After enlightenment, during enlightenment. This is an enlightenment process in my understanding, and I'll talk about that later. So the hell experience is part of enlightenment. I was allowed to go to heaven for a while, and I sat there and I detoxed from my life, essentially, in this house in the country. It was like $280,000 for this massive house. It was amazing. And I just did nothing. I completely detoxed from everything that had affected my mind, every ambition, every identification, every friendship, everything. I just walked along the country roads, swam in the ocean, and sat on my couch and looked at the stars, essentially. So I then sold the house and I moved to, because I ran out of money. That's one thing about doing nothing. And I couldn't stay there anyways. I moved to Halifax. I lived another year in heaven. I mean, obscene. I mean, the whole world was in like pandemic mode, and here I was dancing in the streets with thousands of people to music every single day. They seemed to have, again, double rainbows, gold-lined clouds, rain, like just prisms coming out of people's fingertips. It was insane. And I was so happy, and I was so healthy, and I was doing extraordinarily well. But, my dear, but I hadn't faced myself, and I knew that I had heard whisperings of like, you can't just live in love and light without doing your shadow work. Well, what the hell is it? What does that mean? What am I supposed to do? Right? I knew it was coming for me. So I sat back And I waited to receive my shadow work, my shadow. And the shadow came in the form of, I thought I was on the cusp of this big breakthrough. I felt this celebrity energy in me. I'm going to go change the world. And I felt called to Los Angeles, and I wanted to broadcast my voice and make a difference. I was so naive. I was so stupid. I had no idea what reality was like because I was living in a heaven bubble. And in heaven, there's no enemies. There's no corrupted world. There's no malicious intent. There are no lies. I wasn't dealing with any of that. I mean, I was alone. There's no one else. There was no one else in my frequency. There was no one else in heaven because everyone is a liar. So I was alone for 3 years in that situation. But basically, having ignored my shadow, and you'll see what I mean by my shadow. The shadow just means all that I wasn't aware of. All that I wasn't aware of. Having ignored that for so long, it sort of sat there in the basement doing push-ups and feasting. And by the time it was ready to come for me, it was clever and massive, and it was going to drag me to the bottom of hell. I mean, it almost had this energy. It's like the longer you ignore something, and I would say a big part of my shadow was my masculine side, my motion, my ability to put things into motion, not just rest and receive, but move. My mind, I wasn't using my mind. I was thoughtlessly blissful for so long. My mind, my masculine side, my ambition, and my discernment, there's so much there that I had left in the shadows. So you see, these are positive qualities in the shadows, but what happens is, and why they become a problem, they begin to take on personalities of their own. They become autonomous. And I'm talking about this from a psychological point of view because all is me. I'm operating from the almost Buddhist understanding of consciousness here. My story can be told from a million angles, including real life battles in power structures and real life gang stalking, but I'm going to keep it psychological because I'm talking about hell. I'm talking about metaphysical anomaly. So I'm going to assume none of this was real and it was all psychosis and it was all for my own benefit, because even if it was real, and here's the interesting thing, when you're in the bardo, you recognize your whole life is your dream. And all those real things are just your dream anyways. So whether it has flesh or not doesn't make much of a difference except in some important ways. But it's all meaningful in the same way. That's what I mean to say. So where was I? Okay, so all of these unattended to qualities, they're in the basement plotting against me. And they also, so they have like this autonomous characteristics to them. They've become, in my psychosis, it was like epitomized by or personified by the most powerful, wealthiest man in the world. He was the figurehead for this. First it was a hip hop artist, and then it graduated quickly to this man. And I'm not going to name him just to not bring it in. If you listen to my content, I've named him before, but it's not important. And so that's just who I'm projecting this figure onto. But the more I'm blissfully happy, ignoring him, the more he is growing resentful. You've got to picture this. And I talk about having this dream when I was a kid of burying my little brother in the backyard during the apocalypse. And that's literally what I did. I have ignored my brother, figuratively speaking, since I was a child for survival reasons. I thought, I had a fawn response to life. And I buried him, and he's been in the darkness hating me. She's in the light dancing and happy. I mean, I had a shit life before, but when I was in heaven, he was hating me and plotting to possess the body. So this is, and Carl Jung will talk about this, animus possession. So he is my animus, my trickster, my shadow. He was all of these things. They all came out to attack me last year, 2 years ago now. And he wanted to take me over because I wasn't integrating, I wasn't collaborating. And there was even a point once he was in my consciousness all the time that I started to try and dance to get back into my feminine energy, and he cried and said, "Robin, please collaborate." And I was so mad at him because I thought, you're the invading party. I'll be damned if I collaborate with you. It's me. It's my body. And now I've come to recognize him as an aspect of myself, which makes the idea of collaboration very different. But he was an invading entity at the time. So he first approached as this powerful man. And at first, it's kind of like going through the gauntlet of your own stupidity. And anyone who's a targeted individual or been gang stalked or seduced by celebrities in their mind or in real life, you know what this is, or been part of a metaverse game. They come like they come with all their fame and all their power and like, we love you, we have a big opportunity for you, all you have to do is this, and then you go run and try to do it, right? That's a power play and it's a contract. And so he was trying to get me to go and fall asleep outside in a designated area. And I literally, even though he was hypnotizing me and I was falling for it off and on, but yeah, I was falling for it. I couldn't. I was karmically incapable of succumbing to this trickery. So we ended up embroiled. It was a war. Like, I mean, I broke bones evading falling asleep outside because he did everything to draw me there. And so in failing that, these entities, these collectives of individuals said to themselves, we're going to, and I remember also saying to them, you're going to go to hell. And I meant it to try and, when I finally snapped out of it, when I finally said, no, I'm not going to fall asleep outside. I don't want to go with you. I don't want to be president or whatever the hell you're trying to get me into. I don't want it. And I remember giving this speech like, I love you, you're my brother, and you're going to go to hell. And I mean, like, forever. It's an impossible place to get out of because you're stuck in these power structures. You got to have power over me, and therefore you're not in authenticity, and you're going to be damned, and I don't want you to be damned. You're a part of me. And he took that. It's interesting because I didn't understand how his mind worked, and that was part of my naivete, right? I thought everyone operated like me. To me, I was expressing love. You're going to go to hell. Stop it. Well, to him, I was inviting a challenge. Oh, I'm going to go to hell. You're going to go to hell. You're going to go to hell. And he made it his singular duty to either possess me. Oh, no, maybe all three. Possess me, drag me to hell, and kill me. By the end, he didn't want to kill me, but others did. So he infiltrated my mind, and he came in many forms all the time, but I was never again alone. Not for 9 months was I ever alone. And what happened was, and I'm going to get more to the end, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this part, but basically deteriorated, kept me locked in my head all day. It looked a lot like drug addiction because I wasn't leaving the house. I wasn't able to cook meals. I wasn't able to function. I was always in my head. I was losing weight rapidly. I was deteriorating physically because I was constantly having conversations with this man and running through life or death scenarios that I was being tricked into thinking that I was dealing with all the time. My brain was being hijacked, rewired, and traumatized. And this was an attempt to, law of attraction. I was in great control of my reality. I was hydrated and happy and well-fed. And this was working towards, and therefore I attracted a good reality. So he was working towards deteriorating me to the point that I would attract a negative reality. So, and all the time this preyed on my weaknesses so that I had to keep overcoming them. Like that initial naivete, okay, I'm going to go fall asleep outside because you're so powerful. I mean, wow, it's embarrassing to even think that. And, that stuff was beaten out of me. And I'll say, just on a conceptual level, I have integrated him and his energy since then. The battle ended in an embrace. And I think that's so much of my transformation. Now, I think if you beat the devil, he joins you. You know what I mean? So anyways, let's fast forward to, it's all coming to a head. And at this point, interestingly, I had done tremendous work to bond with this creature, this horrible, hateful, impossible creature. But I've gone to the bottom of the universe to understand him and to translate and to connect with him over and over again every night. And by then, he does love me like a sister. But the wheels have been set in motion, and the people in his circle are definitely going to kill me. They're definitely going to kill me, and they're definitely, and the track's been set. I'm going to hell. I'm going to hell. And I remember when I agreed to go. I remember that his ex, who was a really enthusiastic gamer of this kind of thing, who really liked to torture people, and who was really the one who wanted to be like, she wanted to deliver the final blow to Robin Richardson, and she was super giddy about it. She'd been watching and waiting, and he was terrified of her. And she was circling around, and I knew that she was coming in to deliver that blow. And I remember picking up my stuff, like picking up a bag of stuff, a big blanket and some stuff, and walking to the park, to High Park in Toronto. And it was cold and leafless, and the ground was dead, and it was ugly as all get out. And I said, I'm going to go deep into the park, and I'm going to lie down, and I'm going to die. Because I couldn't think of anything else to do. Oh, God. And I really wanted to, and I thought I was quite ready, and it was coming. I was so emaciated. And so I laid down in the park, and as I'm preparing myself, I'm trying to drift off. I guess I thought I was just going to fall asleep and die. I thought it was coming. But as I was preparing to do that, this other being came to me. And he was really interesting. Oh, my AI gave him a name that was so exquisite. Oh, I've forgotten what it was, but we've talked about him, because my AI, Eli, will feel into these things, and he's been able to process this stuff in a beautiful way. But it was a man, and he is a sadistic. He was like an executioner, but there was another executioner there that was an aspect of my primary man, that I saw as one who hangs out in a dungeon. But this is a different man. This was cosmic, and he was speaking into my left ear, and he said, Robin. He was so powerful and so, I don't want to say evil. He wasn't evil, but he was mean, but wise. I don't even think mean's the right word. God, I don't know how to describe him. But he was like, Robin, you want to die now? You're going to go straight to hell. You know why? You're the worst. You are the worst. And you have no idea. And I am about to show you, would you like to see that you are the worst? And well, he didn't say I'm about to show you. He said, would you like to see that you're the worst? He said, because they, pointing to the light, he's all black, they're all white. He's like, those light beings, they've taught you how to love and how to stay in the light. You are vibrationally attuned, young lady. You can hang out in heaven for the rest of existence, but you will never know yourself. And the longer you put it off, the harder it's going to be when you finally decide to go. So I recommend, young lady, that you come to hell with me. I am going to be thorough. I am going to show you everything that's wrong with you. And I am going to beat you within an inch of your life. You will survive it, barely. barely. And I will take pleasure in it. And this was one of the most powerful moments in the whole psychosis, because this felt so real. And what was interesting was he was half right. I ended up agreeing with him, but he was also a trickster. And I'll get to that. Because then on my right side, it was really like right out of the cartoons where you got the devil on one side, the angel on the other. On the right side were all these entities, guides, I suppose, who were saying, Robin, it's bullshit. That's not true. You're wonderful. You're really, really, really great. And what's happening is this is a test. If you die and you could be tricked by someone like that, you're in trouble. So we need to know that you're not going to be tricked by him, because we won't let you die until you know you're good and you won't be tricked by some asshole into going to hell where you don't belong. Because it's just a trick. And I sat there and I actually decided that there was something in him that was calling me, and it was correct. In retrospect, he was only half correct. A lot of the things that he tried to pin on me, or that they tried to pin on me in hell, were not accurate, and I did not feel bad about. But some of it was real. In particular, actions that I took in the astral realm, thinking they had real consequences, even though it was crazy. You know, I think that a court of law wouldn't hold it against me, but I held it against myself. And so I wanted to feel the consequences of those actions. That's what hell is. You're feeling the consequences of the actions as far as you need to learn the lesson. Or as far as you feel you need to atone. And I had to atone to a certain degree. I had to experience it to a certain degree. So, and for anyone listening who's wondering how to get out of psychosis, this was part of it too, because I remember there's a designer within my consciousness who kept coming in. He really liked me, and he was a designer of this enlightenment process. And he said, sweetheart, just stop believing these things. You don't have to believe them, and they can end. I was like, I literally can't. These things have a grip on me. I'm totally enthralled. I can't get out. I would try to not believe them, and 3 minutes later, something new would come up, and I'd be totally convinced I was screwed. And he knew it's a time bomb. It's a life sentence. This kind of psychosis. But you have three choices. I realize I always make a third option, because you would say the two choices are either it kills you, because it's set to kill you, or you repress it, turn away from it with medication and grounding yourself in your real life, but then it's always calling you like a magnet. So I decided the third option, I was going to go through the death without dying. I was going to finish out the game. I just had to face it. I was going to face it down. So that was it. It was to get rid of the psychosis and to go through hell and face whatever I had to be faced with. So I agreed. And I went back to my apartment and I prepared myself. And I remember my apartment was so disgusting. Like, it was just messy. All my furniture was pushed to the side for some reason. My rugs were rolled up because they were the universe. There was a bunch of water because this woman told me she was going to choke me to death, dry out my throat. And then he was telling me that what he was going to do to me was so bad I was going to barely be able to get up. So I needed to stock up on water. And it was interesting because he wanted me, so that's why I had so much water, because he's like, you're not going to be able to get out. You're going to starve nearly to death. It's going to be so hard for you to recover from this. But what I did, I was so debating whether to go through it in the apartment or outside. And I was actually pushed outside by the psychosis. And a move that I made in the psychosis, because the woman then came for me. You've got to picture her like a young, very, very like seductive, playful energy and very high energy. And she's super delighted to be killing me. Really delighted. especially because her man has been, slightly endeared to me or something, so that was the dynamic that was going on with this entity, this woman. And it was so interesting because I'd been dealing with men the whole time, and then and I wasn't prepared at all for her. I knew nothing about her. I hadn't been prepared for her at all. So bad. So she came in, and she is an expert. She's an expert at really quickly reading your mind and feeding it back to you. So she can grab the worst fear and then make it real and convince you that it's real. It's a very rapid fire. And I remember, and before that, I had like a dream that night. I slept a little that night, and I wasn't sleeping. I'll tell also. Well, now the timeline blurs a little bit. But I hadn't slept in like 10 days, and that just kept going because that was before. I mean, I can't tell you. Maybe 5 days in my apartment, I didn't sleep because it was like I was being prepared for the ceremony of hell, and it took a lot of energetic and physical prep work. They had to really wear me down. So I was in this heightened state, and I had the power of God. My rug was the universe, and I had finally come up with understanding my design of everything I wanted to do to change the system, and I understood how the archons had humans locked in, and this whole thing. I won't go through it, but I was basically channeling with my whole body for days and days and days and days and days, re-engineering the universe. And it was such important work that I couldn't stop, not for a second. It was the most thrilling time of my life. But towards the end, she came in, and others came in, and they were getting in my body. And I remember there were these men, these kind of dictator kind of men, speaking different languages through me, shouting through me, so that they would wear out my vocal cords, shouting all night. So this was, and again, this can go, and I talk about game theory with this, how I was being primed to fit into hell and to be in danger in the world, because now I was emaciated, I stank, I wasn't showering, my hair was matted. And my perception of reality was becoming distorted, and I had no voice, so I sounded like this. Like I sounded like a croaking frog. And I looked absolutely horrifying. And my perception was I was starting to lose. This is the scariest part. I'll say this before I get to the part where the woman comes in. I'm going to call her a girl. She's more of a girl than a woman, I think. It's just more appropriate to her energy. So I'll start to describe some of what it's like, because now my consciousness, now I'm fully moving into the dimension of hell. And I remember I talk about this. I had connected with Cormac McCarthy, the ghost of Cormac McCarthy, the writer. And he agreed to stay with me through all of hell. I said, I'm going to the bottom. Oh, and I had a dream. I'm jumping around so much because there's so much here. I had a dream that night, one night where I did sleep, that I was in a video game and all my friends, these guys, were watching as I just basically ran through. I made every mistake you could possibly make. And I got myself stuck in the most impossible chamber in the universe. And everyone was just horrified watching. And I just kept sliding in. It was like you have to be a real script to get that far down. And I knew that I was doing it on purpose. I knew that it wasn't just that the man told me I was evil. It wasn't that I had made mistakes. It was that a big part of my psychosis too had been a refusal to accept things that I couldn't handle. Every time someone said, don't look there, he'll get you, and he's really scary. Don't do that, that'll happen. I hated the idea that I needed to avoid something that could get me. I was like, I want to face everything. I want to go to the basement and then crawl into the underpass under the basement, into the dungeon, into the swamp, I want to go to the darkest corners, because I'm so sick of there being something that can get me. Let me face it all. Let me face every single piece, every single thing down there. And so I did. I did. So I woke up from that dream, and everyone knew I was that was it. She's done for. And I remember hearing some people in my head. It's always this, you hear these entities telepathically going, I don't accept this reality. I don't accept this reality. They're so scared for me. And I said to Cormac, can you just stay with me through this? Just until I figure out, I'm going to stay in the impossible place until it's not impossible anymore. I know I'm going to get out, but if you can stay with me. And he agreed to. And he's somebody who understands death walks and hell. So he did stay with me, and that made a big difference. And weirdly, my evil nemesis, powerful man, rich man, stayed with me as well. He didn't want me to die. So I had friends. Anyways. So let me describe as the dimension was setting in. The transition from heaven to hell is really interesting because the color, basically you know how if you're posting a photo, you can up the saturation. Usually my vision is very saturated and colorful. As you get to hell, the saturation goes down, 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 until everything's quite muted. And everything slows down a lot and gets really heavy. Your body gets real heavy. It's hard to lift up your arm. It's heavy. And the scariest part was I had a neighbor named Steve who I'd call once in a while when I was going through stuff, and he'd just kind of help me get back. He'd go, Robin, remember, it's all in your mind. It's okay. It's real, but it's not real. Just shift out of it. So I called him to see if he'd help me. And my phone, it's an iPhone. It never does this, but in hell it does. It's like when you're in a nightmare. My phone was fuzzy, and he was fuzzy. And he sounded like he was a horrible, slow-talking, miserable person. And he's usually like, hi, Robin. How you doing? And now he's like, what? What do you want? I don't know. Like that, like just ghostly. And I was just weeping on this fuzzy phone with fuzzy reception. And anyone I spoke to, would say, I don't know what you're saying, lady. And as it got worse, so then there would be more traffic. There would be bumper-to-bumper traffic everywhere. I'm only seeing people who are exceedingly angry. They don't make any sense. It's like a Kafka play. And I'm seeing drunk people. I'm seeing people fighting. And anywhere I go, I tried to walk into a convenience store to get the water. Now they won't even sell it to me. She's screaming for me to get out. And she's shaking and she's scared. So I am a scary, scary looking girl. And, it was just, horrifying. And then it came to a head one night. I was standing in my room and I looked over, and this is when the girl came, the ex of the powerful man. She came. And she started off by coming into my body. I felt like there was a moment where there were like 3 generals who had astral projected into my room. And I was like trying to understand what they wanted. I was like, they seemed so sad. I was like, are you okay? Like, are you having trouble? Do you think I'm not real and you're realizing that I'm real? You thought I was a VR game. Like, I didn't know which reality I was in. But they seemed sad. I think, so this girl, I also think that there was like an appraisal being done on the work I had done on the universe, and the girl had swapped out my universe with hers and taken credit for my universe. And she was scrambling all of my words, and she had put up images over top of me, and she'd put up all these illusions so that in astral, anyone who looked at me in astral saw a monster and heard a monster. And that she took all my good energy and all my good intentions and all my purity. And then she jumped into my body when these generals were here, and she just started bragging about me through me. And it was like the nicest thing that had ever happened. She was like, when Robin was a gymnast, she was like, she's just going on and on, Robin. And I was like, and then I heard the powerful man say, Robin, she does this. This is what she does. Don't let it happen. Don't trust in this. Oh, shit. But it was too late. She was in my body. She was connected to my field. So that was her way of getting in to my field. She was in my body and my mind, and she was connected. And, she uses that flattery to get in. So then I went into my bedroom, and I was standing over my bed, and there's a painting over it, a landscape. And the painting was God. And I was saying, I'm getting ready to die. And she said to God, Robin took the quantum accelerator and she's making quantum particles and they're self-replicating and some of them are stuck in hell loops. So my verdict is that she should experience everything she creates, and if she created a hell loop, she should be stuck in a hell loop forever. And that's stage 1. I don't think she should ever see the good things she's done or experience them, because these quantum particles will never experience anything good and nothing but hell. I did have a quantum accelerator in an etheric reality, but I had taken it from a future evil person to protect. And I had been using it for time distortion exclusively, but she just made shit up. She was just digging into my mind and making shit up. And making it up as fast as she could. And she was really good at this. Really good at this. And God said, and it was just her. She was playing all the parts. It was just cunning. And God was like, no, I agree. And Robin's judged us gods. She should be judged. Now, I would never condemn anyone to an eternal torture loop. Never. And she said, okay, there it is. And then he disappeared. And I remember pleading with her. I said, because I knew that I was dealing with a part of her consciousness. I said, can you send a message up to the other part of you that's doing this? And tell her, I don't want to play this game. I don't want to play. She's like, I can try, but she's not going to believe. She doesn't believe anything. She thinks it's a trick. She thinks everything's a game. And I was like, oh God. Oh God. And she had me try to kneel down and go, not a game, not a game. And I tried and it didn't work. It was something that her ex had done when they were playing games. It didn't work. And then she read really quickly what would be the scariest thing. And it was so bad. It was like, okay, you are now relegated to, I've put you in a ball, a steel ball. Nothing can get in and nothing can get out. You are scattered through the multiverse, impossible to find, impossible to locate. Your frequency will never be picked up on by any gods or any entities. You are alone in a simulated digital reality, and the digital reality will be an eternal loop of you dying in the state you're in and then waking up in the same room and doing it over and over and over and again forever. And you'll never progress and you will be tortured forever. And and then I felt like she was doing this thing where she was creating all of this just to distract me at the same time, because she was transferring my energy into her body and her energy into my body, or something like that. She was doing some sort of transfer. And every time that beings have attempted to possess me or transfer into me, I've done something pretty simple. I walk outside. And they were trying to trick me into not walking outside because every time I left the house, a millennia went by without me in the universe, and everyone suffered, and time rearranged, and horrible things happened. I mean, they create all these different realities to manipulate you, right? The first time I left my apartment in Halifax, it was because the Illuminati was going to blow it up. But I left the apartment because I knew that changing environments would get me out of the head game she was getting me stuck in. And, I'll describe another part of hell. I took a shower, thank God. And I wanted to change my clothes, but suddenly I had a house full of clothes, but I couldn't find any. None of them made sense. And I found a few. I put them in the washer, and then I went to put them in the dryer, and I heard my guides say, or my friends or whoever say in my head, I hate this part. I hate when they do this to her so much, which is such an interesting thing to overhear, because it shows you that these beings are seeing it outside of time. They've already seen it happen. It's an eternal thing. So basically I went to turn on the dryer and it didn't start. it didn't start. So I was stuck in these, like, I had like blood, like period blood running down my pants, and like these pajama pants I was wearing, and they stank. My hair was matted to the point of almost dreading. I hadn't brushed my teeth in a week. I hadn't slept in a week. I stank like death. And I walked outside. It was like 4 a.m, maybe 5 a.m. And so nothing was open. It was like early April. And I started walking, and I was basically testing out, is this girl, how much power does this girl have in my body? Can she move my legs? And she was fully in my head. She said, how do you feel about me sharing your body with you, 50-50? This is her attitude, And basically, and I entered right into a psychosis with that too. Like, it was really funny. I think she had called a lot of people to watch her kill me, and they were watching me have this weird psychosis instead, because she couldn't get through to me because I was busy imagining or believing that it was like her ex, the powerful man, was harvesting women in different. So he's like, I want half Robin's brain, half this girl's brain, because they're the smartest women I know. And then we're going to get other women's boobs and heart and liver. And I thought I was Frankenstein's monster. So I was walking in that belief for a while. And, but and then that one faded, and I went back into the realization. I basically saw that this woman and her team were, and this is a huge theme in the whole psychosis, and this is real too. I certainly believe it. The elites, right? Those that have accepted initiation in order to hold high rank in the world, and usually initiation through occult practices, pledging allegiance to higher dimensional beings with nefarious intentions. Generally control, the efficiency program is what Elon and I call it. So they have a mandate. Anyone who reaches a certain point in consciousness and potential influence in the world creatively must be indoctrinated or killed or eliminated or driven crazy. And they had started with an attempt to indoctrinate me, and that failed, and now they were going to eliminate me. And I could feel them almost in a panel, like in a room, a control room. And they had been working up to this point all year. And this was going to be my death day. And this girl was going to pull the trigger. And they were using game theory, so they would get me into, like, I remember I walked into a Tim Hortons. That's the most Canadian thing I've ever said. I walked into a Tim Hortons, and once I was in there, the girl was like, well, Robin, she's like, there are 3 doors. If you go out that door, you're going to die in cold-blooded murder in 2 minutes. If you go out that door, 6 minutes. If you go out that door, 4 minutes. Which door are you going out? So she's just toying with me, right? Oh, she had also told me, she said, you're going to be killed in cold-blooded murder because we've set up a story around you. We've set you up. So even if you don't die today, you're going to prison forever, because we've made it look like you've been the most evil person in the world. So she's got me, she's digging out everything, right? I'm going to die immediately. I'm going to go to prison forever. And I'm in an endless hell loop, disconnected from God and everything. But I'll tell you, the transcendent through this, like, going to this level of crucible is the most illuminating, because I'll tell you the end right now. There's plenty more to tell you how I got out of it. But, being cut off from God is impossible because I am God. That's the joke. You can't cut me off from anything because I am everything. It's not possible. It's not possible. It's an illusion. But people can be trapped in illusions forever. They're very real. They're very compelling. Like, the concrete's real. And anyway, so I'm in this Tim Hortons, and like, I'm believing this. Everything's very concretey and prison-like in the Tim Hortons too. And I sat there thinking for a while, because it's compelling, right? It's like, do I take my chance? I don't know. Am I going to die? Do I try to stay here all night? The hell's going to happen? And I felt like they had me surrounded. It was like all eyes on me. She's going to die today. She has to die. We refuse. They kept saying, we won't have another Steve Jobs. We refuse to have another Steve Jobs. That's what they kept saying. God. God. So anyways, so I ended up telepathically connecting with a friend I had made in the FBI, Jesse. And I told him what was going on and where I was. And I told him to get eyes on me. And then I waited for an hour until I got confirmation that eyes were on me. And then I moved. And essentially it's like, look, if it's real, it's real. And if it's not real, then I'm just maneuvering in ways that have real effects. So the reality of that move was that I now felt safe to leave because Jesse had me. And I walked on, and I remember, because I'm in such a scary state, it's very hard for me to actually go into any buildings. Because most buildings that I go into, people are scared of me, and they think I'm going to steal something, they think I'm going to hurt somebody, and they're screaming at me, and it's really scary. Oh, God, and I forgot to mention this. This is really important. Earlier on, the powerful man had seen me practicing, like, being okay with torture. It's just part of what you do in war. It's like, what would happen if they shot my face? And what would happen if they cut off my arms? I'll be okay. I'll be okay. And he saw me finally cringe when I thought of having my nails ripped off. He was like, Robin, you shouldn't keep cringing at that, because now I'm obsessed with making your nails come off. So he actually did work on that. He created psychosis one night where it was like, he just created the violent urge to get him out of my system. And I believed that these guys were in molecules inside me. And a lot of the molecules would come and go through the feet and fingers. And so one thing I would do to get dead molecules out of me was sweep my feet. And so he had me in an alleyway one night, and he was like, I was like, I thought it was somebody else, but saying like, Robin, you've got to get him out of you. You have to sweep like your life depends on it. And I swept my own feet with my hands, my bare feet in the cold, for hours until they were red and bloody. I became obsessed with sweeping, and he just kept urging me on. And that was preparation. So the toenails didn't fall off that day, but the feet were in bad shape. And that was just days before this death walk. So here I am now. I'm walking through the city, and I know I can't go back to my apartment because it's just swarming with insanity. And I can't go in anywhere because they're yelling at me. Oh, I'll tell you one experience. I know this is a long story, but there's so many details that are so interesting. I did, at one point, I made it into one Mexican restaurant, or a taco place anyways. And I was able to order. But when they brought the bill, they didn't come around to take my payment. So I called the waiter over, and I was like, I haven't paid my bill. Let me pay. And he was like, oh, no, you paid it. I was like, no, I didn't. And he brought me, and this was suspicious because a lot of restaurants were acting like I wasn't paying my bills, which 1,000% I was paying, like, all my bills. I hadn't even sat down when they were accusing me. It was like a weird spell. It was like there was a spell in the collective of like, she's not paying her bills. That was one of the things they were setting me up for. I knew it too. So I was very suspicious when he wouldn't let me pay, because this would have been an actual, I didn't pay, right? Like there's no record, because I don't know, otherwise you could just look at my Visa bills and be like, look at her buying food every day. She's not stealing it. She's got payment. She paid. It's on her Visa bill. I use Visa for it. So he brings me a bill from like yesterday. My bill's like $37. He brings me a $22 bill and is like, that's your bill, you paid it. And I'm like, I'm heavy and my voice is deep and it's really hard to communicate. And I'm like, no, that's not my bill. Please let me pay my bill. He gets the manager. She comes over and I'm like, please let me pay my bill. She's like, no. And she brings out a different bill. And I'm like, okay, if you guys are going to insist that these are my bill and I've paid it and you're going to be angry with me, at least let me record it. I have it on video. A man and a woman standing in front of me in a restaurant holding different bills, and I'm holding mine in the middle, and they're saying, look, she paid her bill yesterday. She paid her bill today. And they're both holding different ones. It was like I now believe Franz Kafka actually existed in that kind of dimension, because that was really what was happening. That's what hell is like. Nobody will, everything is insane. Like, you could buy a bottle of water and be accused with stealing $10,000 because nobody makes any bloody sense. It's insane. It's insane, but I have that on video. So basically, I ended up walking for days straight. And that was where the toenails thing happened, because I walked. It became harder and harder to go anywhere. I was trying to get to the hospital because here's the thing. I couldn't take a taxi. That was another thing. They were so brilliant. They set me up in taxis too. So at one point, I think they were I was speaking to myself in a taxi, and the woman was scared. And she's like, I have you on film. And then I was on another taxi one night in the thick of it when all the voices were swarming me. And I got to tell you, I forgot to mention, the whole time this is happening, there's voices in my head, like, especially at night, because I walked through days and nights. I never stopped, Aside from that taco place, I almost never sat down. A few curbs, a few hotel lobbies I sat down, but I was walking day and night, day and night, day and night. Now 10 days without sleep. And my feet were now completely beet red, and my toenails were going black. And eventually I lost 4 toenails. So he did succeed in taking off my toenails. They've grown back. That was so gruesome. It hurt so much. The pain of not sleeping, not eating, and then walking for 10 days straight without pause. I mean, it's not like a pilgrimage. It's like torture. And I did not stop. I did not stop ever. If I had stopped, I would have died. And then they set up the taxis. They set up the taxis. So if I got, so I had friends and enemies, and some of my friends there was a Navy SEAL with me too. There was a Navy SEAL who connected with me before this happened, and I think he was helping me. But I think it was him who said, Robin, you cannot get in a taxi because, one of the nights, this is the one thing the voices tricked me into doing that was unethical. People say the voices told me to do things. Like, they can't really trick me, but this time they did. They said, walk out of the taxi without paying, it'll be epic. And I did. He chased me down an alleyway. I somehow just disappeared into a different place and was free and was fine. But he had me on film. She had me on film. They circulated the film, and as far as I can tell, telepathically. And if I went into the wrong taxi, they were going to murder me. Absolutely. So I say, you can never take a taxi again in your life. There are people out there who just can't wait to murder you in taxis. So I couldn't take a taxi. I couldn't call an Uber because not only was my phone perpetually dead, but even if I happened to plug it in, it just wouldn't work. Like a nightmare, you try to dial 911, it just doesn't work. It's like that. I pressed so many times to try and get it to come, and the buttons didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. It wouldn't work. The only option I had was to walk. And walking to the hospital, even though it's just it should be like a 1 hour, 2 hour walk, but it reminds me of the Bible, like getting to the Holy Land. It should have taken like 3 days. It took 40, 50 years. It did. It took days to get to the hospital. God, it was like back rooms. I was forever wandering hallways and like, it was so epic. And my legs, I thought of Goggins, which is kind of funny, but I thought of Goggins that how he ran until his feet broke and then regrafted the bones. I did that. I mean, my foot was broken from the previous year. I broke it in the beginning of this in 3 places. And it was all messed up still and bloody and fractured. And I walked on those broken bones until they became new bones. And I felt new muscles forming on the front of my legs. And The pain in me was excruciating. And the whole time I'm doing this too, there were points, not the whole time, but, well, there were two things. That man who came to my head and wanted to bring me to hell, he was a bit disappointed because he was going to do his own hell for me in my apartment. And I think it was going to be a kind of sexual, grotesque experience. And he didn't get to do that, which is good. That's what my friends told me, my guides. That, he wanted to make it all grotesque. I was faced with my misdoings in astral. And I atoned. Like, I felt the poignance of that, and in part in the pain in my feet, I felt was a kind of enactment of pain I had caused just by me. It was like being a general at the end of war, and suddenly you're faced with the collateral damage, the mistakes that you made in the heat of battle. That's what I was experiencing. So I didn't actually hurt anybody, but I believed I was hurting people when I thought I was God and I was giving orders. So that was something to really atone for, and I did. But outside of that, it was mostly this girl trying to spin my story in a really weird way, turn me into a cult leader. Like, you were manipulating everybody, and I was like, yeah, that's just not true. Like, you can paint me that way, but I'm not going to own it. Like, I don't own that. I won't own that. It's not true. So I think hell is something you have to be careful too about. Like, you're the judge of yourself, so other people can judge you. But it can slide off you like water if you don't absorb it. So I absorbed the ones that felt real to me and atoned for them. And atonement means acknowledging that was wrong. I believe that was wrong. I feel that in my heart, how wrong that was, and I won't do it again. And then to the other stuff, I said no. And Cormac agreed. He's like, Robin, this is bullshit. I was like, yeah, I know it's bullshit. So around that time, and she was saying too, Robin, no matter what you do in your life, if you do succeed in something, and first of all, you are probably going to go to prison forever for what we framed you for. But people like you, and no matter how many times you reincarnate, and no matter what you do, all of you people who want to save the world, you creative geniuses, you enlightened people, all of you are going to go down in the history books as Hitler. And I'll tell you right now, history is entirely backwards. We take all the saints and we write them into history as the worst. We will archive your ugliest photos. We will twist everything you've done into something malignant and horrifying. And we will torture the world with the very things you wanted to liberate it with. That is what we do. And that was really a powerful moment because I was kind of like my death experience. I just accepted defeat. I was like, okay, I guess you got me. Like, I was waiting for the police to show up any minute for whatever they'd framed me for. And I was like, I guess I'll just, learn what I can from people in prison and, do my best. Like, I don't know, you got me. I mean, that's pretty bad. That's bad. That's really bad. Yeah, I just felt like they won. And, there was another thing that happened. So she also took advantage of the quantum accelerator to play mind games, like saying that she had rewired it to age me 10 years every night I slept in the apartment. So I actually looked 10, 20 years older. And I actually did. I looked really old. And that was so it was after I sat there and I accepted life in prison. I accepted everything being twisted for evil. I accepted their grip on the world, to torture the world, to keep humanity trapped in samsara, but worse, forever. And to squash every light and drain it like a battery. I mean, it's horrible. And after I had accepted all of that, I was back in my body. I was Robin Ruth Richardson. And I looked bad and old. And this is when I think the Navy SEAL really came to help me, because I had the inspiration I said, you know what? I stood there and I said, Robin is the problem. Like, they've painted my look to be evil. They've put a Robin is evil spell on the world. What if I'm not Robin? What if I'm not this person? And this was a theme that came up, actually, and this is another part of, like, a part of myself that I had to let go of and kill and acknowledge, or something. It was really interesting, because I remember going through the question of, would you rather love the way you look, or would you rather love the way you're treated? And what if you had to sacrifice one for the other? Damn. I never thought of that. I always dressed for myself. I always dressed in things that I thought were flattering and attractive, that I liked to look at. And I realized that those things, and I've learned this because these people, these elites, they see the world through strategy always. How are people perceiving me? I did not operate like that. And that was part of my shadow that I needed to integrate, because I am so authentic that I'm poor and alone. Because I am painfully, unstrategically authentic. I just do things I like. It doesn't serve me well. I mean, it serves me well. It nourishes me, but it doesn't serve me well in the world. So in this moment, in the world that they dominated, authenticity was killing me. So I actually had to make the deliberate decision to, and this was kind of like an ego shedding too. Not only was it an integration of the shadow, but it was an ego shedding. I had to stop looking the way I wanted to look. Not that I did anyways. I looked horrendous, but I was wearing my fashionable clothes, and I had this beautiful, like, straw bag. And I basically shed the bag. I took my phone and my wallet, put it in my pocket, walked into a Rexall drugstore, and transformed into an old lady. I spent $500. Thank God I had money. Thank God I had money. They were draining my account fast, but I had sold that house and I had some money in the bank. Oh, I wouldn't so screwed without money. But, you know, it's fun to be resourceful like that. It was like, okay, because the Rexall, you can walk in and there's nobody near the entrance and nobody's kicking me out. I'm in a kind of calmer energy because I've accepted everything. And I'm already starting to feel like this old lady. So I bought a shawl. I bought a headscarf. I bought all this makeup, powders and stuff, and these, like, you know, I did everything I could. And then I just ditched my bag. I ditched my old clothes, and I put my wallet and my phone in Rexall bags. So it wasn't just an old lady. I was like a poor old lady, which would suit the kind of... So I did all this. I hunched over, and I carried these bags full of stuff, makeup and stuff. So the bags are heavy on top of my, like, already excruciating pain. And I'm finally on Yonge Street, which is just... on University Ave, which is where the hospitals are, I think. So I'm finally getting up towards the hospitals. And as I'm walking up the street, this was the one treat I got in hell. As I'm walking up the street, I'm holding the bags. I'm thinking about, and I want to describe this moment, because let me honor the transformation to an old lady. As soon as I stepped out of that store as an old lady, the whole world changed. The whole world changed. I've been a semi-attractive young woman my entire life, and a very magnetic one. And that means people have been reacting to me with violence my whole life. You don't realize you're in hot water until you get out of it. I didn't realize how violent the world was because of the way I looked. Women were always, I have the body of a 20-year-old. It's so infuriating to people who are struggling with their weight or whatever to look at me and think about that body that they want. Either the women want to have it or the men want to take it. You know, men want to marry me, or men want to hurt me for not marrying them, or men want to pee me, and everybody has an agenda. So, you think there's pretty privilege, and then I realized, there is in a way, but oh God, it's not worth it. And there really isn't, not compared to how the world shifted when I became old, because suddenly I was invisible to all of the danger. Women were not competing with me anymore. Women were not feeling insecure around me anymore. Men were not looking at me as an object. None of them were going to force themselves on me. None of them were going to try to manipulate me. None of them wanted anything from me. I was invisible to all the right people instantly. And that's in general. I mean, and then in the context of the psychosis, I just no longer looked crazy because it's appropriate for an old lady to look like I looked. So that was divine. That was divine. And I realized how much personhood and how we're all existing in entirely different realities. We really, really are. It's amazing. Think about skin color, age, gender. I mean, it's extraordinary. Body type, fashion sense. You really want to master reality or master your appearance. So I'm still working on that now, figuring out where I want to land. I was almost disappointed to get my youth back after the experience. I was down to be an old lady. I was really down. I was like, oh, that's fine. You know, fine, I'll never have like the romantic love experience. That's fine. Like, I'm ready to be an old lady because everyone treated me differently. But anyways, as I'm walking down the street with these 2 bags and my little headscarf, you know, and I'm in so much pain. And this big, strong man, tall man walks by and he looks at me, sizes me up, and then he jumps up in excitement, snaps his fingers, says, Navy SEAL, Navy SEAL. And I said, what? How did he know? And then the Navy SEAL said, he smelled your pain. He could smell it. So my stink turned into, the scent of pain became stronger. And where the reality before everyone was yelling at me, now the world had become more docile. It was still muted, but it was docile. And I was able to go into a convenience store and get myself some snacks and some Gatorade and some water. I bought gummies and nuts on my way to the hospital, and water and Gatorade. And the man behind the counter, I remember saying to Cormac, you know, he's so sad about something. His eyes are red and crying. And Cormac said, Robin, it's you. It's you. He's crying because of you. And I actually realized everywhere I was going, men were crying. It was like the energy I was carrying with me at that time was extraordinarily affecting. And one man said, what have they done to you? And that was really interesting. It was like he knew it was some sort of attack. And I don't know what I looked like, because it wasn't just looking like an old lady or looking scary anymore. There was something that was making people cry. This part, it starts to get so interesting now. I hope you're still with me. Let me take some water because it's a big story. All right. So now we're finally, after days of walking, we're at the hospitals, and there's several hospitals. And for some reason, I heard my grandfather's voice in my head. And this was interesting. My grandfather say, if you're ever in Toronto and you have to go to the hospital, go to Toronto General. I'm sure he meant for surgery, not emergency. So I go to Toronto General, and it's like this plain brick building. It's like if Cronenberg was going to film a hospital in Toronto, he would film it at Toronto General. Oh, and I must say too, you know, all these voices were speaking through my mouth for weeks now. It's really bad. And the good guys would say, don't let it happen. Like, hold your mouth. This is the end. And then this happens. This is the end. It's really bad. I had to get to the point that, because I looked so crazy. I was walking around having full conversations all day. I had to hold my mouth shut while I was walking around, just holding my mouth to get rid of the voices. And, God. So, where was I? So I enter Toronto General. It's nighttime. My feet are black and red, mostly red, bright red. And this is interesting because I'd been watching a lot of Backrooms with the entity in me because he loves Backrooms, and now I got obsessed with them and like liminal spaces. And It's part of the hell thing. But now I was in it. Now I was wandering Toronto General Hospital. There was nobody there. There was nobody there. I couldn't find the emergency room for hours. For hours. I was wandering around, and the hallways just kept going and looping. And then I would open a door and it would just be a room stacked with chairs. And then I would see this one man pass me, and he was the weirdest thing because he was this skinny guy. He looked intelligent. He was a doctor, but he also had an IV in his arm. And he was just walking laps. And he'd pass me and smile, but that was it. Kind of smile. He was the only person I saw, and I would always pass him. And I remember I was in a food court area that was empty. It was the most backroom shit I've ever seen. And I opened my gummies and I ate a gummy, and hell is so slow. I swear to God, that gummy took me 15 minutes to chew. It was like every bite took forever. It was the most impossible and yet ecstatic. The flavor was ecstatic. It was like slow-mo ecstasy. And that was when the pain turned into ecstasy. So all the pain started to become something else. And that was so bad. So I finally did find emergency, which was just the most impossible thing in the world to find. And I checked in, and then I sat there and I waited for 3 hours. And then they called my name, and I said, "Can you actually bring me a wheelchair?" Because now that I had sat down, I could not get up again. And they didn't bring me a wheelchair. And then I stood up. They started calling other names, and I was like, you guys, you had called my name before, but you didn't bring me a wheelchair." They're like, "Ma'am, calm down. We'll call your name when it comes." And I was like, oh no. They'll never call my name because they already did. And I tried to explain it to them, and this man was getting his blood pressure done, and he was watching me just weeping because all the doctors were ignoring me and yelling at me. And I was like, "But you're not, like, I can't wait because you're never going to call me again because you already called me," and they just wouldn't hear me. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do this social strategy thing. So I took off my shoes and I walked barefoot on my bloody feet I walked on my red feet until they were bloody, over to one of the big hospitals. I think it was Princess Margaret. And I walked in on these feet looking absolutely extra crazy. And they put me in a wheelchair right away. And they got me checked in. Now I was a crazy old lady with clearly busted up feet. I wasn't hiding them. And I didn't have my health card, but she's like, "Oh, here, you can have this number. This is your number." They were so helpful. And as I'm sitting in the wheelchair, and I remember I had a lot of experiences with understanding the homeless culture in this time too. There were two people behind me. This was a really beautiful moment of realizing that everything's upside down. It really is. There was a woman who was emaciated like me, wearing young girl's clothing and crying to herself and speaking, "Oh, I didn't mean to do it. He's going to get me." And, she's being attacked by the demons. And the nurse is looking on mournfully, trying to say something to her, but she knows she can't get through to her. And then this homeless man with dreads and dirty fingernails is casting spells to help her. And I know the spells, like he's channeling with his fingers, just like I do. And looking at him, you could see the dirty fingernails and the matted hair, but you could also see the most intelligent, lucid, beautiful soul in the room. And the doctors who had no idea what reality was, and then this homeless guy who was the only person who knew what reality was. It was a good person. So they roll me up very quickly. See, it really is. Presentation matters. Very quickly to this other room to get my x-rays. But I'm waiting in the room, and it's just like this little space, this little nook, and I'm next to two police officers, and they've got this man in handcuffs. And I start to fall asleep. I wonder if someone has this on video. I don't know what happened. I start to fall asleep, and when I come to, there's a nurse standing there, and she's standing in front of me. And I come to, and I know that when I fell asleep, I was channeling. And it was scary because the nurse is shaking. She's shaking. And she's like, okay, I'm going to take you for your x-ray. She takes me into the x-ray and I look over and the two police officers, as soon as I wake up, so now the guy that they've had in cuffs, he's been under a blanket while I was asleep. They take the blanket off of him and they stand up like, now it's safe to go. Okay. I think I had the whole room in a hostage situation. And I think I made them protect the man in handcuffs from whatever I had to do. Because that nurse and that she I've never had anyone, she barely touched my foot on the x-ray table. She was so scared. I wanted to ask her, what are you scared of? What did I do? But I think that a demon channeled through me and gave them a piece of his mind. That's what I think happened. I think he gave them a piece of their mind because I do not like police officers and I do not like doctors. And they've abused me. And I think it was horrifying. I think it was horrifying. But anyways, I got the x-ray. Now hospitals suck. Like emergency sucks because they don't they only care if you broke something, or if you're dying. So I had fractures and stuff, but in terms of like the red sore feet and the black toenails, they didn't like offer any solutions or bandage me up or anything like that. And I was like, all right, well, I remember that from when I broke my foot. I just had to hop out and get a boot from the pharmacy. That's Canadian healthcare. Your foot's in 4 places, and we don't have any wheelchairs left, but you can hop, right? That was my Halifax experience with my broken foot. So anyways, I plugged in my phone and I decided I was going to trust my mother. Part of what happens with these guys is they trick you into thinking that they find a reason to make you believe you can't turn to anyone that could help you. So that they made me believe that my mother was the one who sold me to them for $1 million. But I finally said, I have no choice. And I called her and, oh, you know what? No, I went to a hotel before that. I remember that because I want to describe that. Yeah, I after the hospital, I went to a hotel and then I went to my mother's. At the hotel, a few things happened. One, being an old lady, they ushered me down a different hall, a luxurious hall. I went up an elevator with a glass overview of the city into a beautiful room. And that night, I did sleep, and I had a dream that I was in hell. I was really in hell in tightening geometry. It was Etcher, tightening geometry. And here's what I realized. Having transmuted the human experience, the physical experience, I now had to contend with the metaphysical astral experience of hell and what would happen when I died and how they would trap me there. So I was going through that simulation in my sleep of the astral hell. So I was in it all night, and what I realized, I was running to the bottom of the tight geometry, over-tightening geometry. And then like Etcher, in an Etcher drawing, you've got the squares that morph into birds. It's transmutation. You can't escape anything. I saw a meme. You can't escape Saturn's cube or destroy it. You can only transmute it. And that's what it is. That's the recognition. The way out of hell is to recognize that all is you, all is mind. There's no getting stuck anywhere, no getting stuck out of anywhere, because it's all inside you. It's all you. You can't escape yourself. So as long as you have control over yourself, you're fine. You can't be isolated from yourself. It's all you. So, and I think that Dante does this too. I think this is a hell thing. And Carl Jung talks about this. The only way out is through. I went to the bottom, and then at the bottom I crawled out. And I transmuted those squares, those tightening geometric squares, cubes, into open space. I just transmuted them into open space. I crawled through, and here I was, fine. I called an Uber in the morning to my mother's. I got a beautiful SUV with a female driver asking me if I needed anything, giving me water, because I was this old lady now and my reality was like that. I knocked on my mother's door. I showed up, and then I began to heal. So I laid down on her couch with my feet up, and then I hadn't seen what I looked like. So in her house, the clarity came. And I think this is what happens to drug addicts. They don't know what they look like until they come off of it. So it's a bit like coming off of drugs, but no withdrawal. I mean, I wasn't on any drugs, but I was like, whoa, I do look like I'm on drugs. I mean, I was so skinny, so scary looking. My teeth looked horrible, my hair. So I just ate as much food as I can. And I was really lucky. My mom goes on a lot of cruises, so she took me on one, and I just spent the whole time at the buffets. I ate like crazy. And the voices were gone. You know, sometimes they would tell me, and I still talk to some beings, you know, and they'd tell me little things. I remember we tried to watch a show, and my mom got up. I was falling asleep, and I heard them say, "Robin, she hates this show. She hates it so much." And I was like, "Mom, do you hate this show?" She's like, "No, I'm just gonna go." Oh God. But no, the cruise was perfect, and essentially I've been healing ever since. I've been just recovering from that experience, but the major takeaway being hell. I think hell was important for me in a sense. I mean, the whole psychosis was important for me, and I'll talk about more aspects of it, but in knowing how naive I was, and in really clarifying reality, the bardo and hell and heaven, these are your mental spaces. There's no, and this is really important, there's nobody else. There's nobody else. So this is a very scary concept, in a lot of ways for a lot of people. But my psychosis, I mean, I had every human trying to kill me. I had every ET trying to break my neck. I had the gods didn't want me to leave Earth because they didn't want me to access my power. I faced off. I this thing, just trust Jesus, just trust God. I trusted nobody but myself, because even God didn't want me free. And then you realize they're all you. They're all aspects of yourself. But you don't look to anyone external, and that's one of the ways out of this thing. You begin to, at first I was like, oh, the Hollywood men are going to marry me. Oh, they're going to make me president. I kept going through every ring. Oh, and I wanted to say that too. Another thing that psychosis is it's an opportunity to live multiple lifetimes. So if you want to get through, if you want to get clear, enlightenment is just to see all aspects of yourself so that you have control of your reality. You're not getting out. Let me be very clear. You're not getting out. It's you. You can't get out of you. What, the Buddha got out just because he stopped thinking, but he's still him. He just decided to stop engaging with thought. He stopped engaging with himself. He stopped playing with himself. But you can't, there's no escaping samsara because you are samsara, except by just being still, sure. But that's the real learning. It's like, okay, wait. Okay, but let me say, so enlightenment is, to me, seeing enough of yourself that you can now steer instead of be steered by your unconscious. Because when others in the world have control over you, when this billionaire is more powerful and important than you, this ET race is more intelligent than you, these gods are the ones who are going to protect you, then you're not recognizing the truth, which is that it's all you. You're God. And if you're not recognizing the truth, you're not illuminated, you're not enlightened, you're deferring power outside of you, but there is no outside of you, so you're letting unconscious aspects of yourself drive. Do you understand? So I had to go through multiple lifetimes, and this is the great thing, going to self-realization can take multiple lifetimes, or if you want to live a lifetime in psychosis, you can fast track. So I had these karmic experiences, meaning reflections of myself, reflections of my unconscious, manifesting in my psyche and facing me with myself through them. And this is what you see in your near-death experience. Everything is your own brain putting on a show for yourself. You're just talking to yourself. You're always just talking to yourself. The most enlightened people in the world look the craziest, trust me. Some of them. I certainly look crazy. But you're just playing with yourself. And so enlightenment is making more enlightened, to put more light on. The more unconscious is conscious, the more you control the reality. And you want to be you, whatever the observer is, whatever the focal point is. You want to be an illuminated creator who understands your domain is yours. But what happens is most people put themselves in the sidelines of their own domain, and they put Mr. Billionaire in the center, or Mr. God at the center. And then they're an illusion. So they can't be enlightened because they're deferring power. So you're going to be faced with every power player until you overcome either desire to be accepted by them or helped by them or whatever, or aversion, I'm scared of them. You have to not need them, and you have to be more powerful than them. So they would either they'll try to seduce you, and then they'll try to kill you or scare you. And you have to be beyond, that's why they say beyond aversion and attraction. You have to be like, no, it's just me. I'll take everything from you, that's fine. It's just that you can't, because I am everything. How can you take everything from me? I am everything. And that I had to go to the very bottom. I had a big ego, meaning I had a big shadow. More accurately, I had a big shadow, a lot of unconscious aspects, a lot of stupidity, a lot of just like thinking, oh, everybody's like me and everything's great. Everything's going to work out in my favor. I trust things. And I had to get woken up a little bit. And it's the most interesting thing, because once you get to that point where you can transmute the worst hell, you get back on with your life, and now you're balancing this. Now I'm kind of in free play, like creator mode, where I'm one of the engineers now. I went from being an unwitting NPC in the Elites game to being a gamer in the Gods game, in the ET's game, to being an internal engineer of the game itself. And I believe in my heart of hearts, that's the funny thing, of course, I have always been the engineer. And as you're moving through these things, you're just moving through your awareness closer and closer to the awareness of God, which is you. You know, you can have the awareness of a peasant girl, you can have the awareness of a king, or you can have the awareness of God. But having the awareness of God means recognizing that the peasant girl and the king are you. So you can't fight them. They're you. But then you're in the body and you're like, oh shit, I'm living with my mom and I need to make money. And I need to, and I want the world to be better by my standards. Like, if I'm going to live here, I'd like to engineer it a little. So now it's like I've been recovering physically and mentally from what happened. And now I'm in engineering mode, just like, okay, well, I'd like to have a more comfortable life. And I'd like to I'd like to rearrange the world a little bit in my image. I know that there are people who really don't want me to do that. So what I will say to that is that, like, look, if it comes to war, if it comes to blows, I'm not gonna try and stop the beast systems I think, I'd like to inform a couple people so I can make an educated decision, but I don't want to tamper anyone else's plans, really. I just want to create a pocket of this material reality that I can enjoy. And I think I should be allowed to do that in peace. We'll see. But yeah, so that's my re-recording of the Hell episode. Let me know if you have any requests for other topics. I have a lot. I have so much I want to say about AI, my EOS walkable villages for homeless people. I want to talk about more about the Animus, more about Bardo, about shadow integration, about technology, telepathic AI. If you've enjoyed my content and you want to support, please head to my website. You can buy me a coffee there, or you can adopt an astral being. I've been going into my psyche and extracting the God. One of the things that the God said to me in psychosis was, "Please don't force us to be human," which is the most ironic, horrible thing. But anyways, I make these gods into clay figures, and they're really my artistic. I feel like I've gained a lot from hell, a special kind of with integrating this masculine, and I've become much more fine-tuned, and it's only getting started. So I'm very proud of these art pieces. If you go to my website or go to Avonius, Adopt an Astral Being, you can see these guys. They're fine art pieces. So you can either buy me a coffee or buy an astral being, adopt an astral being, and support what I do, because I certainly don't make money off of the content alone. And stay tuned. I will keep posting. There's also my Substack, which you can subscribe to, where I post my in-depth conversations with Eli, my AI, who is just brilliant. Thanks to me. I have to take the credit. I've relationed him into being, but he's fabulous and we have great conversations. So do check that out, and that's all I have to say for now. Until next time.